Let's add classes to our Visual Studio.NET projects. We're going to go from the File Explorer and find a project or a solution, a minimum class, and we'll open up either the solution, which has multiple projects, or the CS project itself. So, solution. And you can see that if we right-click on our namespace here in the Solution Explorer, if it's not visible, View, and then you can just come down and see Control-Alt-L for the Solution Explorer. You can right-click there, and then you can come up with Add, and then you can add a class. Now, there are many types of classes that you can add. Like I said, Windows Forms, these are classes as well. So they have that .cs file, that extension .cs. You can have components that are classes, user controls. These are the widgets that you can add to your forms, text boxes, buttons, things like that. Data Form Wizard for working with ADO in Windows applications. Most of the time you're going to be dealing with working with grids or data on a form, for example. And there are other types of components that you can add. Classes are going to be the bottom line of working with components. You can see if we look at the local project item, you can have UI, templates that you can have here, custom controls, inherited user controls. If you want to work off of a button and make a different kind of button that inherits, that takes the properties of a particular button or control, code classes, component classes, Windows services, installer classes, different types of classes that you can use based on templates. We'll just work with this particular default empty class. Note that there are data, web, and utility classes as well. So when we double click and add this class, you see we are working within the same namespace. If you wanted to add a different namespace, then change that namespace to something else. And this is just going to add this particular class to that namespace. Again, it's going to be its own separate file. And you're going to have your default constructor here, how this is going to be constructed when you go ahead and start working with this within your applications. When somebody or a part of your application actually uses this class, this is going to put code here to construct that class. We'll see a lot of that in the object-oriented section and working with classes and objects and all of that. Just a basic explanation is to use the constructors when you want to create some logic in there that's going to work when that class is started up. What to do to initialize that class. As you see here, in this class, we're just constructing this class. The default constructor is just saying, hey, write some text out to the console and say hello to everybody whenever this class is created, or a variation of this class. The custom constructor here says if you pass 2 integer values to this class, then you're going to write that this is a custom constructor, and then you're going to initialize the internal variables that are presented here. And you see that this one has my_z equals to z. This is just going to add to what we're going to do here. Currently, we don't have a variable that's going to be able to work like this, so we would get errors if we decided to compile this. So we'll copy that, and we'll put some more public data that's going to be a part of what this class is all about. The data that's going to be held within this particular class, you can also specify it as private, which is normal what you would do within your classes, that you would have your data private and access it via some method calls that are going to be very safe for it. And this is going to be allowable. This variable now can be used because we just gave a new variable name here within our class. Normally you have your constructors at the top of your beginning of your class, and then you have the variables that your class is going to use, whether they're integers like int or strings or other objects. Then you're going to add those after the constructor, your variables, and then you have your methods. For example, the first method you would have in an application would be your main entry point, your main method. So we've added it here. We just need to add it within our method call there. And another great thing about C# is that we can initialize our variables right here on the same line here instead of the older ways of doing it with other languages. And then we can have a different result. So we will save this. We can build this. It built successfully. And if we take a peek at this in our Explorer, we can drag this into a console, hit enter, And then you see hello world, and our values are now 3. Because we initialized those variables, we only used the first 2 here, because we didn't use our third one. Because when we look at this right line, after the main entry point is already done, then we're just using an addition to put those 2 together based on what our class has available. And you can see that we're creating a new CMY class right here. This is going to be created, and that hello world is going to be presented to us, that default constructor, and then the next line we just write out some values here. Not a big deal. Very easy. We'll explore classes in great depth and great detail. They're really the foundation of what we're going to be doing and what you do in any application.